600 tons of gold quietly stockpiled by BRICS, a 100% punitive tariff announced by Trump.
We're going to put at least a 100% tariff on the business they do with the United States.
And a decentralized blockchain system now in the works, designed to eliminate the US dollar from global trade. BRICS is striking back. Well, what's actually happening to the US dollar's throne? Midway through his term, Donald Trump issued a bold ultimatum. Any BRICS nation that creates or supports a currency to challenge the US dollar would face an immediate 100% tariff and be permanently banned from the American market. He called it an economic red line, one that no country would be allowed to cross. According to Trump, the US dollar isn't just a currency. It's the symbol of America's global influence, decades in the making. This wasn't a one-time warning. Trump repeated it across social media, signaling an unwavering stance to defend the dollar's dominance in the global financial system. It didn't take long for BRICS to respond, and Brazil stepped up as the first mover. As the rotating chair of BRICS in 2024, Brazil openly dismissed Trump's warnings and unveiled plans to expand Pix, its domestic digital payment platform, with over 150 million users, into the realm of international transactions. At the same time, Brazil launched SML, a cross-border payment system using the Brazilian real, bypassing the US dollar entirely. Initial transactions were carried out with Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Though processing speeds remain modest, Brazil is actively integrating real-time payment technologies, aiming for a system that's fast, efficient, and fully independent of the US dollar. This wasn't just a local experiment. It marked the first financial strike against the dollar's central role in global trade. And Brazil isn't standing alone. The pivot away from the dollar is quickly becoming a shared strategy inside BRICS, with an even bolder project now underway, a unified system called BRICS Pay. BRICS isn't stopping at regional payment systems. Step by step, they're building a global financial platform called BRICS Pay, a decentralized blockchain-based system that allows member states to trade directly without relying on SWIFT, the very backbone of the US dollar's dominance. At the same time, BRICS is developing a new reserve currency to replace the US dollar in cross-border transactions. But perhaps the boldest move of all is the massive gold acquisition. In just 2 years, BRICS nations have quietly accumulated over 600 tons of gold, not as a trophy, not as a vault treasure, but as a financial shield for a post-dollar world where each BRICS nation could protect itself from monetary manipulation and external pressure. It's not just Brazil. One by one, other BRICS nations are making quiet yet decisive moves to reduce their dependence on the US dollar. China and Brazil have signed agreements to settle trade in yuan and reais, skipping the dollar entirely. Russia and Iran have linked their domestic banking systems, executing bilateral transactions without SWIFT. India and Russia are now buying and selling oil in rupees and rubles. And South Africa? It's increasing its use of the Chinese yuan in trade with Beijing. But the most telling signal came with the expansion of BRICS, welcoming UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Indonesia, and Egypt. It marked a turning point. Rising powers no longer want to be tied to a financial system built and controlled by Washington. They're moving toward a multipolar financial order in where the US dollar is just one option, no longer the default. America's sanctions and tariff threats didn't just raise red flags for BRICS nations. They've begun to backfire on the U.S. economy itself. Within just 24 hours of Trump's 100% tariff announcement, NASDAQ fell 2%, the S&P 500 dropped over 1%, and the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now model projected a negative 1.8% growth for Q1 2025, a possible sign that stagflation is on the horizon. Investors are now asking a tough question. Has the U.S. dollar been turned into a political weapon? And if the world loses trust in it, it won't be BRICS that suffers most. Don't look away, because this is just the beginning of a global currency shift that's changing by the hour. In 2024, Tesla lost 14% of its market share in Norway, one of the world's most advanced electric vehicle markets. At the same time, the European Union warned it would respond strongly to America's new tax policies. And Canada, in a surprising shift, started sourcing military equipment from Europe rather than the US. What's really happening between these three power centers, the US, Europe, and Canada? During a recent meeting with NATO's Secretary General, President Donald Trump harshly criticized the EU's trade policies. We have a problem with the EU. They won't import our agricultural products or our cars, while we import millions of BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagens. Trade between the US and EU exceeds $1.2 trillion annually. The EU maintains barriers against US agriculture and automobiles. The US remains largely open to European imports. Trump targets EU's favorable tax deals with Apple, labeling it a financial battle. Trump threatens additional tariffs, exacerbating tensions with major EU economies like Germany and France. Tesla, a symbol of American innovation, faces unprecedented criticism from European consumers and investors. In Denmark, the academic pension fund sold all Tesla shares due to union labor agreement refusals, poor governance, and Musk's controversial politics. Pension Denmark withdrew 400 million kroner after Tesla rejected labor agreements in Sweden, sparking widespread strikes. Service centers, transport hubs, and inspection points halted handling Tesla vehicles, severely disrupting Tesla's operations. Elon Musk's political remarks significantly harmed Tesla in Europe. Musk supported far-right parties such as Germany's AfD, UK's Reform Party, and controversial figures in Italy and Romania. Tesla's Norwegian market share dropped dramatically from 21.7% to 7.4% within 1 year. Positive opinions of Tesla fell from 19% to 11%. Negative opinions rose from 47% to 63%. In the UK, 59% of EV consumers refused to buy Tesla due to Musk's polarizing statements. European regulatory scrutiny on Tesla intensified, citing consumer safety and data protection concerns. Tesla struggles with brand reputation and labor issues, losing ground to competitors. Volkswagen, Toyota, and China's BYD introduced competitively priced models. Tesla criticized for delays in affordable model launches, losing edge to favored local brands. European manufacturers aggressively expanded EV production, benefiting from favorable policies and consumer loyalty. Canada is quietly forming a new economic and defense alliance with Europe. Foreign Minister Melanie Joly confirmed Canada's final talks to purchase European military equipment, including Sweden's Saab Gripen jets. Aim: reduce dependency on U.S. defense supplies amid trade policy uncertainties. EU Canada Free Trade Agreement. CETA increased bilateral trade by 60% since 2017. Canada seeks to lessen dependence on the U.S., currently 75% of its exports. Enhanced Canada-EU collaborations extend to research, technology, and sustainable energy sectors, marking a strategic pivot from traditional U.S. partnerships. Facing new U.S. tariffs, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated, "If the EU is targeted by unfair trade practices, we will respond strongly." Europe considers retaliatory tariffs targeting products from pro-Washington U.S. states. The action aims to defend fair trade and communicate clearly that Europe will not tolerate protectionist moves. EU leaders indicate readiness to strengthen economic cooperation with allies like Canada, Japan, and South Korea to counterbalance U.S. policies. Are these shifts merely the beginning of a major realignment in the global economic order, one that increasingly sidelines the U.S. as Europe and Canada forge new alliances? Stay tuned, because what happens next could completely reshape your understanding of the global economy. Those who once rallied behind the Make America Great Again slogan are now turning their backs on Trump. The U.S. economy is plummeting, and his policies are destroying everything. Millions of people are facing a crisis they never imagined. This is not just a problem for one group of voters, but a widespread economic and social crisis affecting regions all across America. Local governments are now facing an extremely tough challenge as Trump's supporters, those who once trusted his policies, are now reacting strongly. These citizens are no longer staying silent. They are speaking up, demanding that the government implement correct policies to prevent further deterioration and restore faith in the government. If the administration doesn't act immediately, the situation will fall into an irreparable crisis. Community meetings and protests are happening across various states, as people have started organizing rallies to demand that the government take specific actions to save the economy. The citizens who voted for Trump are no longer trusting his promises or calls to action. They are demanding real change, the urgent measures they need to keep their jobs, protect their families, and restore their faith in the government. Frustration and anger are reaching a breaking point. And if the government doesn't make timely moves, they will lose the support of those they once counted on. And looking at all the consequences, one big question arises. Can the American people rise up and change the course? Can we recover from everything that has happened? These economic crises are not just a problem for one group of people, but for the entire country. Only when the people unite can we hope for a brighter future. The remaining question is, are we ready to change? Stock markets and cryptocurrencies are crashing, and people are losing their jobs by the millions. And it all stems from a series of chaotic policies that few could have anticipated. Economic crises are unfolding right before our eyes. But most people don't realize just how devastating they are. From Trump's controversial tariff strategies, to the constant changes in economic decisions with no clear plan, the U.S. economy is paying a heavy price. These unstable policies and misguided forecasts are shattering the trust and stability that the American people have spent decades building. With these uncertain tariffs, the U.S. economy is reeling. Both large and small companies are struggling with rising costs and supply chain disruptions, leading to a sharp increase in unemployment. The hardest hit are the people living in rural states, where Trump once enjoyed strong support. These rural families, who work tirelessly to make ends meet, are now witnessing their economy, which they once hoped for, spiral into chaos. They are not only losing their jobs, but are facing unimaginable hardship. From not being able to pay bills to living conditions deteriorating in ways they never thought possible. So who is suffering the most from these policies? It's the very people who voted for Trump, so those who believed in his promises. Farmers, veterans, and rural communities, Trump's most loyal voters, now face not just budget cuts, but also loss of healthcare benefits and mass bankruptcies. These people are paying the ultimate price for the thoughtless decisions from the administration they once trusted. And it's not just their jobs they're losing. It's a huge part of the life they worked so hard to build. Canada is facing one of its biggest trade crises in years. Donald Trump has announced new tariffs on Canadian goods, increasing pressure on Ottawa to back down. Meanwhile, Mark Carney, the newly elected leader of the Liberal Party, has declared that Canada will not retreat. This is not just an economic battle. It's a test of national sovereignty. Can Mark Carney stand firm against Trump, or will Canada be pulled into America's game? On March 3rd, Mark Carney officially became the leader of the Liberal Party, succeeding Justin Trudeau and positioning himself to become Canada's next Prime Minister. But Carney is not a career politician. He previously served as Governor of the Bank of Canada from 2008 to 2013, guiding the country through the global financial crisis. He later became Governor of the Bank of England from 2013 to 2020, making history as the first Canadian to lead a foreign central bank. And on his very first day in office, he found himself in a direct confrontation with Donald Trump, who was applying heavy economic pressure on Canada. Carney declared, "We are not looking for conflict, but Canada will not back down." On April 2nd, the Trump administration announced steep tariff increases on Canadian imports, citing the need to protect American economic interests. The new tariffs will directly impact key Canadian industries. Steel and aluminum. The U.S. has imposed a 25% tariff on steel and 10% on aluminum from Canada. Lumber. Canada supplies 34% of the U.S.'s imported lumber, yet Trump has announced new tariffs on this sector. Automobiles. Canada's auto industry, valued at $85 billion, is also at risk if tariffs continue to escalate. Mark Carney refuses to give in. He has pledged to maintain retaliatory tariffs against the U.S., including higher tariffs on American agricultural products, such as dairy, eggs, and beef. Increased tariffs on U.S. technology, including smartphones and laptops imported from the U.S. "We do not want to fight, but we will not bow down," Carney stated firmly. The immediate impact. Prices of consumer goods have risen in both Canada and the U.S. Canadian exporters face billions of dollars in potential losses. Economic experts warn that if the trade war continues, Canada could lose up to 100,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector. But this is not just about economics. It's about national pride. In response to growing criticism, the Trump administration introduced a surprising justification. The tariffs, they claim, are not a trade war, but part of a fight against fentanyl, a highly dangerous synthetic drug. As a result, tariffs are supposedly intended to pressure Canada into tightening its drug enforcement policies. But what's the truth? According to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, only 43 pounds of fentanyl were seized at the Canada-U.S. border last year. This accounts for less than 1% of all fentanyl intercepted in the U.S. An economic expert raised the question, if fentanyl is really the main reason, why aren't these tariffs targeting Mexico, where fentanyl smuggling into the U.S. is 100 times greater? Is this truly about fighting drugs or just another tactic to pressure Canada? The escalating confrontation between Mark Carney and Donald Trump has completely reshaped Canada's political landscape. Mark Carney has made it clear, this is a defining moment for Canada's future. Will we stand tall or will we kneel? The Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre, has seized the opportunity to attack Carney. Poilievre accuses Carney of being too weak to stand up to the U.S. He declared, "Carney isn't fighting for Canada. He's helping Trump take our jobs." The upcoming Canadian election will be a decisive battle. Will Canadians choose Mark Carney, the financial expert promising to defend Canada's sovereignty, or will they support Pierre Poilievre, a hardline conservative with close ties to Trump? This is more than just an election. It's a confrontation over Canada's future. Will Canada hold its ground, or will it give in to U.S. pressure? China has just responded strongly to Trump's new tariffs, not only targeting American agricultural products, but also threatening critical high-tech industries and vital minerals. How will these strikes affect the U.S. economy and the global market under Trump's leadership? Let's break it down. China has chosen U.S. agricultural products as the first target in this new trade war. Items like soybeans, corn, chicken, and other agricultural products are now facing heavy tariffs. Agriculture is a strategic sector in the U.S. economy, particularly for the Midwestern states that heavily supported President Trump. The U.S. exported nearly $22 billion worth of soybeans to China in 2024. And these new tariffs could push American farmers into financial crisis, even leading to bankruptcies. If China continues imposing tariffs, the impact won't be limited to farmers. It will ripple through the U.S. economy, affecting everything from goods prices to export values. The markets will be disrupted, businesses will struggle to maintain supply chains, and consumers will face higher prices. This could lead to a negative spiral, reducing the competitiveness of American industries on the global market. However, agriculture is just the beginning of China's retaliation strategy. They are also targeting high-tech industries and crucial minerals like rare earth elements, which are essential for manufacturing semiconductors and military equipment. If China tightens its control over these exports, the U.S. will face major challenges in maintaining production of advanced technologies, especially in the defense sector. American tech companies will be forced to contend with higher costs and serious disruptions in supply chains. China could disrupt products like smartphones, computers, and even military gear, slowing production and causing widespread damage to the U.S. economy. If the U.S. cannot find alternative sources, these industries will pay a heavy price. These effects could weaken America's competitiveness in the global tech race, leaving it behind other global powers. Trump has made it clear that he will not back down. The U.S. administration believes these tariffs are necessary to address the trade imbalance and unfair practices from China. However, this also brings significant consequences for the U.S. economy. U.S. markets may face sudden price increases on consumer goods, from smartphones to cars. Companies will struggle to maintain supply chains and lower product prices. High-tech products may become more expensive, directly impacting consumers and potentially pushing the economy into inflation. This could reduce purchasing power, increase pressure on small businesses, and create a cycle of rising prices. Moreover, if this situation continues, the instability in the economy could lead to increased unemployment, affecting consumer spending and slowing the recovery of the U.S. economy. These tariff policies will have a widespread impact on all levels of American society, from consumers to investors. China can still deliver major blows to the U.S., especially by controlling rare earth minerals. These minerals are crucial for producing semiconductors and military equipment. If China continues to restrict these exports, the U.S. will struggle to maintain the production of cutting-edge technologies, which will hurt both the tech and defense industries. Specifically, American tech companies will have to seek alternative sources, which will be costly and cause major production delays.